Well, this is a good place to end the review for now. Part 2 will cover the second half of the film, which I will aim to have done in a few weeks. Well, 6 months is basically a few weeks, from a certain point of view. The Laughing Cavalier here, presenting to you another tale of these troubled times. Today, I shall finish reviewing Cromwell. If you haven't seen part 1, then I'll link it below. We pick up the action just after the Battle of Naseby, where Cromwell's returned to Parliament. Please note the wound on Cromwell's arm that he got at Naseby. He hasn't had it seen to yet, but still decided to ride all the way to London.
The outrageous incompetence and inefficiency of the High Command have tried my patience and that of my hard-pressed army long enough. By my faith, I swear, it would be better that those gallant generals, Essex and Manchester, took up swords with the king. For then might we be assured of victory.
Yes. If we beat the king 99 times, he will still be our king and we his subjects. If he beats us but once, we shall all be hanged.
If that is so, then why in the bowels of Christ did we take up arms against him in the first place? Unless Parliament supports this war to the full, I am bound to say in all conscience that I will lay down my sword and let this house make its peace with the king, be that peace ever so base. This house to decide. I move that this house demands the immediate resignation of the High Command upon the grounds that they be no longer competent to command the armed forces of this Parliament.
Order! The motion has been proposed. Let it now be put to the question. Those against Colonel Cromwell's motion? No! Those in favour of the motion? Aye! The ayes have it, the motion be carried.
I move that Colonel Cromwell be appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Army.
Wait a second, is that John Pym? What the hell are you still doing here? You died in December 1643, and it's now June 1645. Not to mention the rest of the scene is nonsense since, as I discussed in the last video, Fairfax was the commander of the new model, and had been for months, not to mention the fact that Manchester and Essex had long since been removed from command. We now go to Oxford, where the king is holding council with his generals, trying to think of a way he can still win the war.
Das war ein Befehl! Der Angriff Steyers war ein Befehl! Wer schickt Sie, dass Sie es wagen, sich meinen Befehl zu widersetzen?
Sorry, I had to use that clip, it was too obvious. Funny thing is, though, the scene itself is played a bit like Downfall.
Bristol. We must dispatch aid to Bristol with all possible speed, for as long as Rupert holds Bristol, this war be not lost. General Digby, if you can detach your forces in this area and approach Bristol from the east.
Do that, my lord, would be to expose this city to immediate attack.
Then we move the Marquis of Huntly's army southwards.
The Marquis, my lord, surrendered to Cromwell's forces yesterday.
Cromwell. I hear nothing but Cromwell, Cromwell. My lord, 'tis but a game we play here, a game with wooden armies and paper flags. 'Tis but a block of wood you hold in your hand. My lords, all I ask for is a little time. Time, my lord, costs us heavily. If we can hold on here in Oxford for 6 weeks, the Scots have promised an army of 20,000 men. Her Majesty is in communication with my cousin, the King of France. And I have good reason to hope for support from Ireland.
An army from Ireland, Your Majesty?
Faith, I would as soon join forces with Cromwell himself as take up arms with the Catholics.
I am the king and defender of my people, and I maintain the right to seek relief from no matter what quarter. As king, my lord, it is your God-given duty to defend the faith of this nation. I do what I think to be right, sir.
Catholics as allies?
It is unthinkable.
My God, if it's come to this, let us rather sue for an honourable peace
than fight a dishonourable war.
I don't know why they're so concerned about the Irish fight on the royal side. Irish soldiers have been fighting the King's army for a while now. Not in great numbers, but plenty of companies of firelocks have been brought over and served under the command of some of these generals who are now complaining. It was one of the parliamentarians that used the use of Irish troops against the royalists. The whole Irish thing leads to this scene.
I am instructed to say that His Holiness would permit an Irish force to take up arms in this country. But there are certain conditions. First, the Catholic Church in Ireland must be completely restored and permitted to practice freely without interference or oppression. Secondly, all Protestant churches in Ireland must be closed and all Protestant bishops and ministers removed from office. Oh, there are one or two other minor conditions of little consequence.
What you demand, Excellency, would be a betrayal of my coronation oath as head of the English Church.
You have a duty, Charles, to the crown. For without that, you will be head of nothing.
The best way I could sum up this scene is...
every word of what you just said was wrong.
Firstly, the Queen had fled to France at this point and never saw her husband again after 1644, so she could not even be here. Secondly, who was this random bishop? Thirdly, no, Charles did not make a deal with the Pope of all people. He was King of Ireland in name at least, and would have negotiated directly with the Irish. Still, all talk of Irish troops is to no avail though, since Sir Edward Hyde comes with bad news.
You have something to say to me, Sir Edward?
Your Majesty, His Highness Prince Rupert attends in the council chamber.
Rupert? Here in Oxford?
Yes, my lord. I fear Bristol has fallen.
Your Excellency will excuse me.
Majesty.
Do not rise, sir, when your king approaches. Rise, sir, or to your knees in shame. You did give me your most solemn promise that you would hold Bristol for 4 months. Yet you have not held it for 4 weeks. You promise mountains, yet you perform molehills. You make a knave of your king.
My lord, we were besieged on all sides. Our men of foot weary from battle, ailing with plague and sickness.
Yet you contrived to escape with your life.
I have brought you an army, my lord.
An army, 2,000 strong, ready and willing to fight on for their king.
In exchange for all the corn and stores you held in Bristol and 200 cannon. That was the price of your freedom, sir.
I did what I considered to be right.
You deserted your command, sir.
I made a military decision.
Decision that may have cost us this war. Your action in this matter is of such affliction to me, sir, that it is the greatest trial that has yet befallen me. My conclusion is to desire you to seek subsistence elsewhere, not in my kingdom.
This is actually fairly true, since Prince Rupert did surrender Bristol and had a major falling out with the king. However, it was more prompted by the Earl of Bristol, one of the king's advisers, who was an opponent of Rupert at court. He was hated by many royalists and was viewed as almost like a green worm-tongue sort of figure at the court. He was partly one of the reasons why Charles fought at Naseby, despite Rupert's advice, so it is a shame he's written out and the disagreements among the royalist high command are never really talked about. Charles, though, finally realising all is lost, speaks to his son, Charles, Prince of Wales, just before he sends him off to France.
Father, Mother says I'm to go with her tonight to France. Is that your wish, Father?
Yes?
My duty is to stay here with you and fight beside you.
Your place now is at your mother's side, Charles. You will help her raise money, perhaps an army. Should I meet my death and you are safely in France, then England will still have in you a lawful king. You will go with your mother. I love this land. And when this great responsibility becomes yours, then I pray that with God's help, you will reign more happily than I have done. I'll go, with God's speed and your father's blessing. Oh, Charles.
I love you.
Now, historically, this scene is also a bit off since the prince was in the West Country at the time and fled without seeing his father. Still, I think it is a pretty good scene. Oh, and King Charles, by the way, wasn't in Oxford at the time. In the later scene, we see Cromwell personally arrest Charles when Cromwell was out fighting in the West Country, whereas Charles had fled to Oxford to go and surrender to the Covenanters outside Newark. And so, with the war over, peace appears to have been achieved, but, in reality, this was only the beginning of another conflict. Fairfax and Ireton ride to Cromwell with important news.
When did it happen?
This morning. What is it? John Pym is dead.
No way! I could have sworn he died years ago, but there we are. Fairfax tells Cromwell that Manchester is negotiating with the king, so Cromwell takes matters into his own hands.
Such low treachery is not worthy even of you, my Lord Manchester. Am I to believe my ears? Did this nation win a bloody civil war in order that the king should dictate the terms of peace?
I have already discussed the matter at great length with His Majesty.
You have discussed it? It is a matter for this House to discuss.
The king will not come to terms, sir, until the army stand down.
And the army will not stand down until the king comes to terms. So if the king will not talk to this House, then let the king talk to the army.
Out of the question. The king would never agree. Never. Parliament is behind us, sir, and on this occasion, we have the majority.
Sir Thomas Fairfax. I believe, my Lord Manchester, that now I have the majority.
Again, this scene is loosely referring to Pride's Purge that occurred at the end of 1648, but it's nothing like what happened here, particularly since Cromwell was in the north at the time. Cromwell now goes to the king to present his terms.
We came to present our terms, my lord. If your majesty would be so kind as to study these proposals.
Has Parliament approved this treaty?
Parliament no longer truly represents the people of this nation, Sir Edward.
And you, Mr. Cromwell, do you truly represent the people of this nation?
I represent the army, sir. And the army is the heart and conscience of the people.
So, having failed to come to terms with Parliament, you would now negotiate with the king.
I am not bound to negotiate with anyone. With 50,000 men under my command, I could impose a government on this nation overnight.
One is given to wondering, Mr. Cromwell, why you do not do that.
I am deeply convinced, my lord, it be the duty of Parliament to frame a constitutional government, and not the army.
Then I do not see that you have any need of me at all.
On the contrary, sir. An England without a king is unthinkable. But withal, a king that can command respect. A monarch who governs not from fear, but by the affection of a free people. Such a king could reunite this great nation of ours and make the name of England the noblest in all Christendom. Should you adorn that inheritance, my lord, all Englishmen would be proud to call you king.
Mr. Cromwell, I do confess that I did greatly misjudge you, for I did mark you as an ambitious man.
To these ends, my lord, I am ambitious.
Then you have my respect, sir.
Thank you, my lord. We shall return in the morning, sir.
I shall require a little longer to study this document. Perhaps a week.
As your majesty pleases.
I sincerely hope that our future relations may be equally amiable, sir.
That is my hope also, my lord.
A cunning fellow.
I believe him to be a sincere man, my lord.
Indeed.
If these proposals be acceptable, then never was a crown so nearly lost, so easily recovered.
Whatever these proposals may be, Sir Edward, they are not acceptable to the king.
Now, this is a rough version of the events that happened between 1646 and 1648. Firstly, Charles and Cromwell only ever met him personally once in 1648 on the Isle of Wight, so this scene didn't actually happen as is portrayed. As I mentioned before, Charles had surrendered to the Scots, who then proceeded to effectively sell him to Parliament. Meanwhile, there was now a growing divide between the more moderate Parliament and the more radical army, which is addressed in the film. I'll link a few articles discussing the sequence of events in a bit more detail below, but I will briefly mention the Putney Debates, which are shown in the film. Well, sort of.
Cromwell has betrayed us! We have given our blood and our lives in this war to put down this king! If Cromwell comes to terms with him now, what price our freedom then?
We fought this war to remove this king, not to put him back on the throne! I say, let us march on London, let us take Parliament, and then let the king try to negotiate with us!
Traitors! Mutineers! I don't have to tell you, any of you, you could all be hanged for this. We're not serfs, General, nor mercenaries. We have fought for the Lord in our cause, and now we have a right to speak. You have no right to preach, revolt, and mutiny.
As for you, John Carter, I did expect a greater degree of loyalty from you.
I'm still loyal to what I fought for, sir. Can the same be said of you?
I have not betrayed my God, country, Parliament, or my conscience. And where was your conscience this day when you parleyed with the king?
I tell you, all of you, I do most honestly believe that we have taught this king a lesson, and he will prove most honourable. Upon that, I would stake my life.
Just as Cromwell has Frank Finlay hanged for whatever reason, Sir Edward Hyde comes with a message.
Sir Edward, has the king considered our terms?
The king, sir, has not even read your terms. Nor would I venture has he any intention of so doing. He has this day drawn up a secret treaty with Manchester and Essex to raise a Scottish army against the parliamentary forces. He has already consented to a Catholic army from Ireland. While you negotiate a settlement with him, he is planning a second civil war. I do confess that I have these many years given my allegiance to a man not worthy of the title King of England.
As I mentioned in part 1, Hyde was a firm royalist by this stage and did not turn against the king. In fact, he was in exile at this point with Charles, Prince of Wales, so he should not even be here. Secondly, there actually was a second civil war, one which Cromwell fought in, but since that would mean filming more battle scenes, they didn't include it. Cromwell now pushes to have the king put on trial, and we get a surprisingly accurate portrayal of these events.
Charles Stuart, King of England, you stand before this court charged with high treason, in that being admitted King of England, and therein entrusted with power to govern according to the laws of the land, you did out of wickedness and design erect and uphold in yourself an unlimited and tyrannical power, to rule according to your will and to overthrow the rights and liberties of the people, and that you did traitorously and maliciously levy a cruel war against Parliament and the people, and are therefore guilty of all the treasons, rapings, burnings, spoils, desolations, damages, and mischiefs to the nation committed in the said war. Thus, on behalf of the people of England, this court impeaches you as a tyrant, traitor, murderer, and public enemy to the Commonwealth of England.
God save the king!
Silence!
Sir, you have heard the charges against you. The court expects an answer, First, I would know by what authority, I mean lawful authority, I am brought here and carried from place to place, and I know not what, and by what authority you presume to sit in judgment on me. Remember, I am your lawful king. Think well upon it. I have a trust committed to me by God, by old and lawful descent. Therefore, let me know by what authority I am brought here, and I shall answer.
It is not for the prisoner to question the court.
I am no ordinary prisoner, sir.
An answer, sir. The court demands an answer.
Then I refuse an answer.
The only major error is this scene.
And you saw the king and his wife alone in their chambers with this Catholic Archbishop Rinuccini.
I did.
And what did you assume was the purpose of this meeting?
You are obliged to answer, Sir Edward.
To raise an Irish army, my lord.
To fight against the parliamentary forces.
As I mentioned, Hyde wasn't in the country at the time, and he certainly would not be giving evidence against the king, particularly since the evidence is that dodgy scene from earlier in the film with the Irish bishop. Now that the trial is bogging down, Cromwell tries to force the other judges to find the king guilty.
What ails thee? Art thou mad? Have we come thus far that you would betray us now?
There is nothing in the constitution of this land that entitles us to bring a king to trial.
Is not the king answerable to his subjects?
The trial is clearly illegal, and I will have no...
Is not the king answerable to his subjects?
The king, sir, is answerable only to God.
And by God, when he dies, he shall have much to answer for.
We have gone too far in this matter.
This commission has no lawful authority to bring a king of England.
Our authority lies with the Parliament, sir.
Parliament is the law in this land.
If the charges against this king be not proven, what terrible retribution may he not bring down upon our heads?
Yes. In the name of God, what are we all? Men? Cowering and quivering like downtrodden serfs. The king is not England, and England is not the king.
Here is a warrant demanding the death of the king upon the charge of high treason against this nation. It will require all your signatures. Sir Thomas.
I have come thus far with you, Oliver, in our great cause. But I will not sign this warrant.
Sign it.
Oliver, I cannot.
Is he guilty or not guilty?
He is the king.
Is he guilty?
Yes.
Sign it.
Again, pretty close to what happened, although Cromwell was actually the third signature on the warrant. Him forcing the other judges to sign is again pretty accurate, since many were reluctant to put the king to death. As Charles awaits his execution, he gets some visitors.
Your Majesty.
Is it time?
No, Your Majesty. Her Royal Highness the Princess Elizabeth and His Royal Highness Prince Henry.
Elizabeth, sweetheart. Grieve for me, Henry. Now, both of you. Mark what I say. They will cut off thy father's head. Shh, there now. Henry, pay careful attention to what I say. You must not let them make you king. Not while your brother Charles is still alive.
I will be torn to pieces first.
Yes, my son. Today, your brother will be king. Elizabeth Niles. It's a glorious death to which I go. Tell your mother love for her was the same to the last. And remember me in your prayers.
Now, this is actually one of my favourite scenes in the film. It is very close to what actually happened. Princess Elizabeth wrote about this last meeting with her father, and the words the king speaks are very close to what she said. Charles now makes his way to the scaffold, and we get some other nice little references like this.
What kind of morning is it, Colonel?
Indeed, 'tis somewhat chilly, Your Majesty.
And I was wise to put on a second shirt. But if I trembled with the cold, my enemies would say it was from fear. I would not expose myself to such a reproach.
He finally arrives at Whitehall and makes his final speech to the crowd.
I will not delay you long, but will say only this to you. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Okay, he didn't actually say that, but the speech he gives is pretty much what he is recorded as having spoken. Of course, his actual speech was very long, so they cut it a bit short, but that's alright. It is funny how this film can have really inaccurate scenes like Naseby, yet at the same time have really accurate ones like this. The only major flaw I would point out is that, whilst they do correctly show the beheading is taking place outside the banqueting house at Whitehall, it is a rough version of what it actually looks like.
Permit me, sir, that I may pray a while before the blow is struck. Then when I put out my hand so, that will be the sign.
Lord, let us now thy servant depart in peace according to thy word. For mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost, as was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be.
We did not assassinate. Nor was this thing done in a corner. It was done in the face of God and of all men. The office of king is now abolished. Long live Parliament. Long live the Republic.
Aye. Long live the Republic.
Richard, I want to go back to Cambridge.
Wait, what did he say?
You must not think on it, Oliver. It is over now. The war, everything. It is over and done.
Is it? I could have sworn Cromwell went off to Ireland, did some rather controversial things, then went up to Scotland, beat the Covenanters, and then, finally, in 1651, defeated King Charles II at Worcester, finally ending the civil wars. To be fair to the film, I've read a few accounts saying that they were going to have a few scenes with him in Ireland, but the film was made in 1970, just when the Troubles were kicking off in Northern Ireland, and whichever way they portrayed Cromwell, they were bound to offend someone, so they didn't film any. I think it is a great shame that politics got in the way of history, although perhaps it was for the best, since this film does take so many liberties of English history. God knows what they have done with Irish history. Cromwell, though, was soon visited by a delegation of MPs to offer Cromwell the crown, including Ireton?
The country needs a head of state, Oliver. It must be governed.
Is it not governed by Parliament?
There must be a figurehead. It is our tradition. The country needs a king, Oliver. God knows you've said so many times yourself.
The country will be ruled by Parliament. Now, in the name of Christ, how often must I say that?
And who will control Parliament?
The people, the people, the people.
It's not practical. It won't work.
It will work, and it must work.
We are here on behalf of Parliament to offer you the crown.
Now, I cannot quite place this scene. It's referring to the humble petition that advised in 1657, which offered Cromwell the crown. He did actually think quite seriously about taking the crown, as opposed to the film where he says this.
Give it to a whore for the price of her bed. And if you would find a head to fit it, let it adorn some court jester or some strolling player, that he may play your king, but not I.
The problem is that in the film, this scene takes place just before Cromwell kicked out the Rump Parliament, which happened in 1653. Either way, Ireton should not be here. Cromwell left him in charge of Ireland when he returned to England. Ireton then caught the plague and died in 1651, about 2 years before the scene takes place in the film. This film seems to have a knack of resurrecting the dead. Now we come to the final scene of the film, the expulsion of the Rump Parliament, but before we begin, I have to bring up yet another case of necromancy. What the hell is the Earl of Essex doing here? Firstly, he is a lord, so he should not be sitting in the House of Commons, and secondly, and most importantly, and you guessed it, he is dead. He died in 1646, and this scene takes place in 1653. You mean to tell me he's resurrected himself and snuck into the Commons? I'm half expecting Charles I to suddenly walk and say, "Hello there," then whip out a lightsaber and drill Cromwell on a lava planet whilst Ireton and the cringy alien go around banning Christmas. You may think I'm exaggerating here, but given the state of historical dramas in recent years, you know something like that is coming to our screens. Anyway, back to this scene, and honestly, it is done pretty well.
I have always desired, above my life, a free parliament, sitting by the authority of the good people of this nation. A parliament open and visible, to be seen by all men. It is 6 years since I handed over to you this great responsibility, in the hope that you would make good and wholesome laws which the people of this nation expected of you. I must confess to some abatement of my hopes for what has happened in my absence. Instead of uniting the good people of this nation with righteousness and peace, which would have been a glorious and Christian thing to have done, what do I find? Anarchy, corruption, division, and dissatisfaction. I say that the enemies of this nation have flourished under your protection. You were from the beginning a provisional government not truly representative of the people. But have the people elected you? Has this house gone once to the people it purports to represent? No, it has not. And now, after 6 years of misgovernment, what do we find? Sir Thomas Fairfax moves a bill to give this house a further lease of its worthless and dishonourable life. Gentlemen, an immovable parliament is more obnoxious than an immovable king. They're drunkards, tricksters, villains, whoremasters, godless, self-seeking, ambitious tricksters. You are no more capable of conducting the affairs of this nation than you are of running a brothel. You are impulsive. You are scum, sir. And not truly elected scum at that. This is no parliament. I shall put an end to your sitting. I hereby declare this parliament dissolved. Colonel Harrison! Yes, sir.
We don't know exactly what Cromwell said, but this is a pretty close version of what is recorded, with the exception that he didn't bellow,
"Away with this bauble!"
He was much calmer and asked to be removed. We now get this bit tagged on at the end.
I will give this nation back its self-respect. We will walk in this world with our heads held high. I will liberate man's souls from the darkness of ignorance. I will build schools and universities for all. This will become the golden age of learning. I will bring the law within the reach of every common man. There'll be work and bread for all. This nation will prosper because it is a godly nation and because we walk hand in hand with the Lord. I swear by the name of the living God that I will see this nation properly governed, if I have to do it myself. Dear God, give me the strength to do it. Alone.
Oliver Cromwell ruled the nation as Lord Protector for 5 years. In that short time, he raised England to be a great power, feared and respected throughout the world. Under his hand were laid the foundations of a truly democratic nation. In 1658, he died. 3 years later, Charles, Prince of Wales, was crowned king, and the monarch sat once more upon the throne of England. But an England never to be the same again.
Oh yeah, there was something about Ireland banning fun activities and other stuff, but yeah, we left that out. And finally, we are at the end. My closing thoughts on this movie. It's a really weird one to review from a historical perspective. Some scenes are absolutely atrocious in terms of accuracy, to the point that you'll be driven mad by some of the errors, whether it be characters living several years after their deaths, to entire battles and conflicts being swept away as they never happened. When the film tries to, it has some really good scenes that are pretty accurate. The attempt of the rest of the 5 members, the King's trial, and his death scenes were all very well done. In terms of acting, it is broadly pretty good, and it is one of the film's saving graces. I have avoided talking about Richard Harris's Cromwell up till now, since I don't really know what to make of his performance. As one commenter on part 1 of my review put it, he has an epic talent for chewing scenery, and this film is no exception. It does kind of work in some things though, since Oliver Cromwell was something of a firebrand, and therein lies the problem. The film tries to make him the hero of all this, rushing in scenes such as his son dying, his land being enclosed, etc. But since Cromwell has the temperament of a bull in a china shop, he doesn't feel like a hero. On the other hand, we have Alec Guinness as Charles I. He's meant to be the villain of the film, with him being portrayed as starting the civil wars, hiring mercenaries and so on. Yet he's not villainous in the slightest. He has many calm, quiet moments, including the final scene with his children that show his human side, and show him as a man trying to do what he thinks is right. This is really helped by Alec Guinness, who gets so many aspects of the king right, that it would almost be fooled to think you were watching the real king. I honestly think his portrayal of Charles I is the main reason to watch this film. The supporting cast do a fine job for the most part, although a few, like Ireton and Rupert, are taken over by the stereotypes traditionally assigned to the sides in the Civil War. Overall then, historically much of it is terrible, but there are a few gems here and there, and despite my criticism, it is a pretty enjoyable film with some great actors, a brilliant soundtrack, and some pretty, if inaccurate at times, costumes and scenery. I would definitely recommend this film in spite of its flaws. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my new subscribers. My next video review will either be continuing on the 6 Wives of Henry VIII, or, if I decide otherwise, I will perhaps look at another time period. This has been the Laughing Cavalier, wishing you a good day.